All right then. I hope I'm audible. Before we proceed, just a couple of things. I'd request everybody to stay on mute, please. And if at all you have any questions or anything that you'd like to ask, please start posting them on the chat, and we'll definitely pick it up towards the Q&A session. So we'll jump in. Welcome to all of you who've joined this masterclass on cybersecurity, brought to you by Antwork Academy. Just a short run about Antwork. It's an education platform driven by real professionals sharing real insights. And there are more than 3,000 global professionals from over 30 plus countries who've shared their knowledge across 15 domains. And you can head to www.antwork.com to check more than 30,000 videos that are available for you for absolutely free. And also do not forget to sign up on antwork.com. Recently, we've launched a premium program for graduates and early professionals who want to successfully transition into the field of cybersecurity as a career. We'll be giving you the details shortly. So without further ado, I'm just going to highlight the agenda for the day. So the agenda is briefly going to cover these topics. We'll start off with the author introduction. We're going to talk about the importance of web application security. We're going to have a look into DevSecOps, and we're going to have an overview about how things work, some of the tools and trends about web application security, a brief session about OWASP, which is one of the most important topics around web application security. We're going to have an introduction about digital forensics, and then we'll finally head to the Q&A session. So to just begin our masterclass today, we're going to talk about our expert, Mr. Jagdish Prasad. I've been one of the fortunate fellows to have interviewed him and to have gone ahead and have had the privilege to have somebody of his experience and somebody of his academic background that he comes with has just been nothing but amazing. And I've been fortunate enough to have explored a lot of important things with him. To give a brief about the author, Ram, can I have the next slide, please? So to give a brief about the author, he's been involved in the IT industry for over 3 decades. He's worked for all the big brands that you can think about, like TCS, HCL, HSBC. He's also CISO certified with the Chief Information Security Officer. He's worked across a multiple amount of countries across US, Canada, Europe, Singapore, Australia, and India, to name a few. He's also a technology consultant for a lot of companies and startups. As far as his teaching experience, he also teaches in BITS Pilani, and he's been doing that for over a couple of years. He comes with a specialty around cyber and network security, cloud computing, and machine learning. And he also conducts corporate trainings. The academic world, you can see he's an MTech and production engineer from IIT Madras. So that doesn't need a great deal of introduction because that speaks for itself. I'd request you guys to enjoy the session, and I'd request Mr. Jagdish Prasad to share his screen and continue with our presentation. Thank you so much. Welcome everybody, and welcome.
Thank you, Kaushik, for the kind words. And just give me a sec. Yeah. And a very nice and generous introduction. I'm not sure I deserve that, but it's been nice to be associated with Antwork, and guys who are on the call. I've been associated with the Antwork team for last about 5+ months, and the way they've been going about it, and in a structured manner, in a focused manner, and the areas they want to work on, and the objectives they have. This is something really, really phenomenal and very, very interesting. Okay, so let me share my screen while we are. So, guys. And I hope I'm audible to everybody. Kaushik, if you can please confirm.
Yes, sir, you are.
And is my screen visible?
Yes, sir, I can see.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So let me put my screen into, and let me minimize this. Okay, great. So I think we've gone through the agenda, so I'll skip that, as well as I'll skip my intro slide as well as now. So uh, let's uh, let's start with the scenario, and uh, one of here, maybe Kaushik or Ram. I'll take Ram, your name, just for the sake of. So Ram is a regular shopper at one of these e-commerce sites. I will, for the sake of not being biased or not being, vilifying one particular site, I'll say this site's name is xyz.com. It could be anything. We go to Amazon, we go to Flipkart, we go to, there are 10 sites where we go, and we're regular over there. And normally these sites take our credit card details. They store it for our future, convenience. Next time when I go and order, it becomes easier. Now suddenly Ram gets a mail from Amazon, and Amazon says, Ram, you've been an excellent customer to us. You've been very loyal. You've been buying very regularly from us. So we want to, upgrade you to our premium club membership. And then there is a link, and he said that just please, verify your account details with us. Ram is happy. He knows that, yeah, I've been buying quite a lot from xyz.com, and he doesn't suspect anything. He happily clicks on the link, and there are a couple of questions. Uh, the account verification details. Ram does it happily, and he doesn't even remember it. He forgets it, and things start happening after a couple of days. His credit card gets debited for a number of transactions, and for good amount. And then he calls xyz.com, and he says, what is this you guys are doing? You were supposed to upgrade me to a premium club, and now you are making transactions on my credit card. And then xyz said that we never sent you that mail. Now this is what is cyber security. This is what is called a cyber attack. So this is what.
Sir, just a quick thing. I think your laptop is showing low battery, so if you don't mind, please connect it to your power.
Just connected.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, I have connected it. So yes. Okay. So this is what cybersecurity is all about, or cyber attack. And we're going to talk in a very brief manner today. What are the key things, how attacks are done, as Kaushik has explained. It has become very, very important in today's scenario, reason being that we do almost everything online, whether it's your banking thing, whether you're buying, whether you're selling things. And you would have heard quite a lot of things happening on some of the popular selling sites like OLX and all that. Now, I'm just sharing few examples. Haldiram was hit by a ransomware last July, and they were asked for a ransom of about 750,000 US dollars. Now, I don't know whether they paid or not paid, but this is the kind of amount involved, and all their servers are hit. And Haldiram is not alone in this. There are number of things around the same time. Number of attacks happen. On a lighter side, the attacker seems to have got sweet tooth. They attacked after Haldiram, about a couple of months after they attacked another sweet shop in Delhi, Mithas, and similar kind of ransom was asked for. This is not a rare or isolated incident. 52% of Indian companies have faced some sort of attack in last 12 months, be it ransomware, be it denial of service, be it some other type of phishing attack, or be it some credentials stealing or social engineering, whatever it could be, they have faced. The rumor is that even the Mumbai power outage, which happened in October 20, probably there was handiwork of Chinese hackers. Not confirmed. While in the newspaper you would have read it that that the Mumbai Power Corporation has denied it, but there are strong these things. So the thing is, everything which is on the net today is accessible to bad actors, and they can, if we are not safety conscious, if our assets are not secure, these are exposed to attack. In fact, if you see, India is the third largest, some issue. Yeah, India is the third most attacked country after United States and United Kingdom. And the key type of attack, which are denial of service, SQL injection, man in middle, and phishing. These are the type of techniques, or these are the attacks which are used normally. But the key point here is to look at that India is the third most attacked country. And in fact, the government of India did a study, and in June, July last year, when we were at the heightened tension of at Ladakh, there were huge amount of attacks coming in from China side. So that was another thing. Okay. So how does an attack happen? Is it simply like, let's say, when the guys did an attack on Haldiram, that attack would have been maybe a couple of hours work where they encrypted all their databases. But prior to that, there is a whole series of steps. And the 2-hour attack probably requires, maybe 2 months or 6 months or 8 months of very careful planning. And this is something called attack plan, or in cybersecurity, it is known as cyber kill chain. And it has got about 8 steps. There are someone say 5. There are some authors which call it 5 steps, some call it 6 steps, but I call it 8 steps because it, it bifurcates each activity very clearly. And one of the major activity is reconnaissance or intelligence gathering. The whole exercise of cyber kill chain is an equivalent of a military operation. The way a military carries out an attack, they simply don't go into an attack field and start engaging the enemy just one fine morning. Prior to that, they do very meticulous planning, and they do lots of scenario playing. Exactly similar thing is what a hacker does. He gathers lots of information about his or her target, which is called reconnaissance. Based on that, they develop an attack strategy and implant. They identify a vulnerability in the target system and implant a weapon, which will give them further details. How do they? Which is the second stage, weaponization. Third stage is how do they plant the weapon into a victim's environment, and based on the details or based on the information they're getting from the victim, using the weapon, they start planning exploitation. They get better idea about the environment, they get better idea about the network, they get better idea about the network attack surface, and they identify and zero in on an attack surface, and then they plant further weapons if required. And the next step becomes, then they continue doing their work and they expand their footprint into the network. And then the major step comes command control. That's where they take the effective and commanding position and start executing the motive for which the guy wanted to do the attack. So that's when they would start encrypting their databases, as they did in case of Haldiram, so that or they could start deleting the data, they could start corrupting the data, they could start downloading the data, depending on what the motive was. And once they achieve their objectives, then of course They close the operation, remove the footprint so that nobody can track them, and they leave the place. Normally, they might leave a small presence in the environment so that they keep getting the kind of information they were looking or they are looking in future. But this is how an attack goes. So whenever we hear about a denial of service attack or a ransomware attack or something which happens only for a few hours, it's not just a few hours. There's huge amount of planning which goes behind it, uh, and which hacker does. Okay, so that's about cyber kill chain. And guys, Kaushik, if there are any questions coming in between, which needs to be taken then and there, I'll be happy to address it then and there. So this is what the whole process of the cyber security or cyber attack is, and this is what, when you learn about the cyber security, you go through. So you act with a mind share of a bad actor, and then find out what the vulnerabilities are, how to plug them vulnerabilities. So before a bad actor reaches, you have plugged out those vulnerabilities. Okay. So specifically, and there are a number of areas. You have network, you have applications, you have databases, uh, you have your website and everything. What I'm going to quickly focus on a couple of areas, which is web application, because everything is web-based today. Now, what is web application security? Initially, when people started developing web application, they were not that secure. Neither the threats were there, so they were not that secure. But today, it's, as we saw some of the examples, it becomes very, very critical for web applications to be secure. Now, so web app security is basically the idea or the principle that even in the presence of an attack, or even if an attack is launched on a website, it withstands that attack, and it functions as it is supposed to function, rather than it functions as per the wishes of the malicious agent or the hacker. There are many approaches. Some of them are very rigorous testing, and there are 3 or 4 types of testing approaches which can find out how web applications can be hardened, or how web applications can be made more secure. One is dynamic application security test, which basically checks for various security vulnerabilities in an application when it is being built. So while the way you normally do a functional testing of an application, where you validate that the application performs the business function it is expected to perform. Dynamic application testing security does the same thing, that application uh, withstands, or application is secure enough. Static application security test is basically the code analysis of the application. It's like the way you do code review, it's an equivalent of that. So you check whether the application is, the code is written, or the way the code is written, it is secure. Penetration testing is in your environment. You check for vulnerabilities. What are the vulnerabilities? And vulnerabilities are the thing which allow a, a hacker to exploit those vulnerabilities and get into it. Like you would have heard about recently in December, January, there was this SolarWinds extension issue, because of which a good amount of US departments were exposed. So, and it had vulnerabilities. Now, those are the vulnerabilities which penetration testing will actually, it's a comprehensive exercise which actually reveals what are the various vulnerabilities in your environment. Now, vulnerabilities could be the way your applications are built, or vulnerabilities could be the way your deployment environment is built. You may have a component, like let's say you may have IIS, the Microsoft middleware, the older versions, which had vulnerabilities. And good thing and bad thing is that all vulnerabilities which are found in a particular software product, they are available in a global database called CVE, or NST. Good thing is that everybody knows about those vulnerabilities. So as a developer, you can take care of to address that vulnerability. But at the same time, the same vulnerability is known to a bad actor also. And bad actor thinks about how he or she can exploit that vulnerability before that vulnerability is actually plugged by the supplier. So penetration testing would do that. Then runtime application, self protection testing would actually at the runtime. Now, what you normally do, dynamic DAST and SAST are part of the development process. Penetration testing is kind of one-off exercise where you find out where are the holes in your house, what are the possible places from where a burglar can get into your house, and you plug those. But that's a one-time exercise. If there is another hole, or if the burglar comes and he breaks a wall, your penetration testing doesn't help because it's a snapshot at some point of time. Runtime application self protection is the latest technological advancement, which is where an application at any given point of time while it is running, it identifies based on the kind of behavior of the user or the hacker that whether I'm being attacked or I'm not being attacked, whether it's a malicious transaction or it's a genuine transaction. And based on that categorization, it can take an action. It can either stop the transaction, it can create an alert, or whatever it is. So that's the latest one. So we talked about some of the vulnerabilities, and what are these vulnerabilities are. Cross-site scripting is one. Okay, so cross-site scripting basically means. Hello.
I'm sorry, sir. I think somebody unmuted themselves.
It's okay. So cross-site scripting is something where a hacker takes care of or takes advantage of. I'll give you a very simple example. Whenever you have in a browser, like let's say contacts page, or sorry, comments page. In comments page, and almost every website has that comments page. Normally we write normal text. We either write about a product or something else. It's a good product, it's a bad product, whatever it is, we give our feedback. Now, if you are a hacker, rather than writing that, you could actually write an HTML code over there. You can write a script. It could be HTML script, it could be JavaScript, whatever it is. And boom, it goes into the database. It's posted as a comment. So hacker has posted it. Now Ram comes and he wants to know about this product. I want to buy on xyz.com. So he says, let me check what the earlier buyers are saying about it. And he says, yeah, show me the feedback. Now, one of out of the 10 feedback records he gets, one of the feedback records is this hackers, which is not actually a English language comment. It's a script, and that script could actually read the browser variables of RAM, and then you can transfer to the hackers. Whatever the code the hacker has written into that script, it gets executed, and it can and because it runs in RAM's browser with the explicit permissions or authorization level which RAM has, it can do whatever RAM can do. It can take all his details. It may take his credential details. It can take any other detail which he has got, his SSID, everything, and it can simply transmit it to the hacker. And then voila, the hacker can do whatever he likes because he has got. So cross-site scripting is about browser scripting. SQL injection is about SQL. I can do the same thing. We go on a website, we find out about a particular product, and we normally enter a product ID over there or product name. Rather than I can put an SQL statement, and there are mechanisms where I can get the whole dump of SQL, and I can get control of the database, and then I can play with the database the way I want. I can delete data, I can copy data, I can alter data, whatever I want. Denial of service is basically loading your infrastructure with so much of traffic. It's like on a highway, you put so much of traffic, so a jam is created. And when a fake jam is created with a jam is created with fake traffic, even your genuine request or genuine users will not be able to reach your servers. Like you are in a bank, and your bank server is flooded with requests, and a genuine customer wants to do a transaction, the customer won't be able to do it. Buffer overflow is a little technical. Uh, it uh, it deals with memory management, and how, if the memory management is not proper, it can go across boundaries. uh, and unintended code can be executed, or remote code could be executed. Similar is cross-site request forgery. Cross-site request forgery is, the next level of cross-site scripting. It's something similar, like, normally, let's say you have opened Dropbox, and you got a document. So you have two tabs open. One is Dropbox, and another, you have your mail, and you got a document which is in Dropbox. The moment you click on the link on your mail, it automatically goes to Dropbox, because Dropbox knows that it's um, behind the back. It's known that there is something called a same source concept, and it's verified. Now, suppose the same thing is hijacked by by an hacker. He or she can play havoc with this. Data breach is a general term which actually can be taken from all these above. Leave apart buffer overflow, and denial of service. But data breach is basically uh, about sensitive data, and especially confidential information. Confidential information could be personal information, it could be business secret, it could be business strategy, or whatever it is. So that's about some common vulnerabilities. Now, you know how to go about it, how to stop them, how to prevent how to prevent these. So that's where comes the concept of security. In a traditional way, the approach was that we would do a development, then we would do deployment. That means we put it into operation, and then we'll put security. We'll put a firewall, or we'll configure some parameters, or whatever it is. So that's called DevOps. Now, the next approach came that even during development, before I put it into operation, I must take care of security, because security is not something which I can go into the field and then start worrying about security. So DevSecOps, that's the next approach, and we'll see what's the difference. And third approach is that right from beginning, when you even think about, put security first, and especially in today's context, that's the one. So if we look at DevOps, it actually starts in the operate. Normally, I can say that any application or any product I develop, I design it, then I code it, build it, test it, release it, maintain it, and operate it. Release, maintain, operate, and that's where DevOps or the traditional approach was. DevSecOps starts from the validation phase, which is basically the testing phase. Once built, you not only test for your functional correctness and non-functional requirements of the product, but you also test for security. And if it fails on security, it goes back to design stage, code stage, and build. So before it goes to release, your product is strengthened, and then of course it goes. SecDevOps is even before design. Like the way you guys are you guys have know about IT, and when you develop a project, the first thing is functional requirement, and then we also think about non-functional requirement, which are performance, which were response time, which were the usability and all that. We think about those during design, or even before we talk about the project. Same concept is about security. Now it has to be right from beginning, so that we don't even go here and then do a iteration. Okay, so, and that's something which is explained in these three things. So in DevOps, security comes in at the end of the development phase. In DevSecOps, it comes during validation and then iteration. So you can say it kind of It starts here and then it kind of can iterate, or it can go like this. And then SecDevOps is the latest one, which right now this is what it is in in huge popular, but world is moving towards this. Okay, so and to ensure that, how do we, we ensure that our applications are follow SecDevOps kind of thing, or our applications are secure. So there is something called secure development methodology, or secured application development. So that's an approach. So as we saw, that security can either break or make companies. There has been a study, and the study said that organizations which were subjected to severe attacks, which could be persistent, denial of service, or ransomware, or something else, severe, they did not survive more than 2 years. They actually had to, close down. They went out of business. And there are multiple reasons. Customers lose confidence because they don't have trust on the organization, that the organization will be able to manage their data securely. Okay, huge amount of sensitive data is there today in applications. Every application will contain some sort of security data. It could be personal data, it could be business related data, or it could be patient record, or it could be anything, depending on situation to situation. And there are a good amount of regulations coming, like European Union's GDPR. Similarly, US has their own on HIPAA and HITRUST regulation, which requires to conform to certain level of personal data security, and if the organization don't secure to that, they are liable to be penalized. Hence, secure application development has become very, very important. OWASP is an open source platform which identifies, and which has been a great initiative and a great help and great guide towards helping secure application development. But end of the day, this has become very important, and that's where security personals are very much in high demand. Security person, secure. If you look at today's job or role surveys, almost every portal is projecting that security skills are in top 5 skills. Okay. Okay. So what are the various tools and techniques which are used? Shifting to cloud is one, because cloud is with the expert guys, and they provide a basic minimum security. I remember a client of mine who was recently was hit by ransomware about few weeks back, and now they've decided, and they had their own in-house data center, and now they decided to move to cloud. Ransomware is a big threat. Open source attacks are on increase. API vulnerability is very, very high, because today everything is API driven. When you are, let's say, in Amazon, when you are making a payment through your credit card or through your net banking or through UPI, there are multiple systems which are owned by multiple organizations. So there is Amazon. Then Amazon might be using a payment gateway, which could be owned by a third party. It could be LaserPay, or it could be Amazon's own, or it could be somebody else, Paytm, or whatever it is. And then finally your bank, with systems are owned by somebody else. These three systems, I'm saying more than 3 are involved, but these three systems, they have to work in tandem to make one transaction complete. And if any one system has got an API, and they work on APIs, and any one system has got APIs which are weak, an attacker can go and cause a havoc. So that's the key thing. Security as a platform, as I said, security has become very, very important. So as a platform. It comes and it ensures, encapsulates the whole environment, increased use of multi-factor authentication, again, to ensure that the transaction is being executed by the person who he or she says. It's not somebody impersonating. Higher automation and security assessment. Something I talked about, runtime application self-protection. So here AI and ML are being used where in the environment on the fly, it is figured out, it is found out that how the applications, if there is any unusual activities happening, and then take action on that. There are a number of tools. These are some of example. There are huge number of tools available, and which can give you good amount of insight on how things are happening. So these tools are, they can help you on network vulnerabilities. At the same time, they can help you monitor your network or hack your network. They can help you test applications for vulnerabilities. So as a white hat hacker, you can use them to identify vulnerabilities, or as a black hat hacker, you can use Burp Suite to exploit the vulnerabilities. Then, of course, SonarQube and Clockwork are the code analyzers we talked about earlier. Wireshark is a tool which can actually, you can go and sit in a Cafe Day, and you can actually monitor the whole traffic of people who are connected to Cafe Day's free Wi-Fi and what they're doing. So you can actually monitor using, you can, unsuspiciously, you can be sipping your coffee, but at the same time on your laptop, you could actually see what other guys are doing, which is something which Wireshark allows you to do. Okay, so these are the things which I wanted to talk about in general, about what security is at a high level, and in specific terms about application security and all that. And that's where we have designed a course which is a combination of theoretical concept, practicals, and project work, which makes it a very, very strong combination. And that's an experience. It's an experiential program. So it's not only that you just read and learn, but it's actually you learn by experiencing the things. And that's where I'll pass on the control back to.
I'll be taking it, Dr. Prasad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kaushik, yeah. Go ahead, please.
So, hi everyone. This is Ram. So I want to introduce you, the NTWORK Aspiration Learn program on cybersecurity. So this program actually we have created, which is coming out of our own experience of talking to experts and interviewing them for almost a year. And what we have realized is it is always a good idea to talk to domain experts in case if you want to have very, very deep knowledge, right? So in that sense, what we have come up with is a program which is a 16-week long course, of which 12 weeks are dedicated to a core part of the cybersecurity program. And every week or 2 weeks, we are taking up a very, very very special section of a cybersecurity, which is taught by a person, an expert who has been in that that skills, who has mastered that skills and have been working for it for last multiple years, right? So the way actually we have designed our program is also to give not only the core knowledge to participants, but also help participants upskill themselves through soft skills, CV preparation, mentoring sessions. Because what happens is even the cybersecurity, like lot of your work actually goes into talking to people, convincing them, right? And not only in your job, but it is also very, very important to get your CEO placed also in the company. So the 16-week program that we have designed, it is focusing not only on the core skills, but we are also trying to give a lot of emphasis on improving the soft skills part of of the participant, either it is in terms of visual communication, oral communication, written communication, right? And at the end, probably you'll also be able to come up with very good CV preparation, and we'll also have a lot of interview sessions to make you ready to face the interviews. So the classes that we so through a whole 16 weeks, every week we'll have 3 classes, right? All these classes will be scheduled on the weekend. So one class will be on Saturdays, which is for two hours, and on Sundays we will have 2 classes of 2 hours each, right? So every program, what we are trying to do is not only give you the core concept of the program, but also trying to bring up the experience that these experts have in whenever they have encountered some situation in their professional life. And along with their professional experiences, every island or every competency will also have a lot of tools, right? So that so that you learn those tools, and these tools are exactly similar to what is being used in industry, or it is very, very close to what is being used in the industry. So that whenever you join some company, you can hit the ground running, right? You already have experience with all those tools. You know what to do from the day one of your job, right? So that's the important part of this whole program. Right. So so we have 10 different experts who are in their own who are expert in their own domain. Plus, we are also bringing the soft skill trainers, people who are very good at their soft skills. They will help you also to improve up your skills. Right. We have almost 100 hours of live classes. Right. And every class, every topic will be accompanied by a few pre-reads, so that you come to the class prepared. Lot of tools will be discussed, and every every week you will have some projects, right? And these projects will be very close to whatever you are expected to do in your job. So these projects will also be assessed by the experts, and whatever comments they are going to have, right, that you will be able to show them as part of your own work, and probably it will become part of your portfolio, right? So along with this program, we are also helping going to help everybody with the placement assistance. So we are tying up with a lot of people, lot of companies, so that whenever our program is complete, we'll be able to get a lot of interviews for you guys, right? So this program will not only prepare you for your your core skills, but will also help you to get a foothold in the cybersecurity industry. So what we will do is I will pass it on the mic to Kaushik. He will just give you a brief about what exactly are the things that we are going to cover in our in the experiential program.
Thanks, Ram. So as Jagdish sir had shown one of the slides about the statistics saying that 52% of the attacks of the companies have been actually breached in India for 2020. That's one of the clear statistics to show that this cybersecurity field is in tremendous request or tremendous requirement of professionals like yourselves. And you guys are going to be like the driving force to kind of build this. And we have tailor-made this course in a fashion, because in comparison to other people who just teach you 1 or 2 islands, we are crossing about 10 different topics that you're going to be learning about. Like if you look at this, we start from the very basic introduction to cybersecurity, which involves starting from installing a VirtualBox in Kali OS, because I believe that cybersecurity professionals having a grasp of Kali OS is always going to be an added benefit. And it also helps you to enable to create your own testing environments when you go into production. Similarly, we're covering network security and tools like Wireshark, as Sir had mentioned earlier, that it's an amazing, powerful tool that you can scan the network in and out. And obviously, cyber attacks is one of the highlights of the topics, because with the growing era of technology, not only in India, but globally, cyber attacks is becoming a very big phenomenon that every company is expected to be hit by a ransomware attack almost every 3 hours or every 5 hours. And learning about web application security, as the agenda says, that web application security and digital forensics are going to be something that Sir is going to cover. So these topics that he has discussed on and over is going to be discussed in depth throughout the classes, in addition to you learning tools like Burp Suite and OWASP Zap. And believe me, these tools are so powerful that with some few mouse clicks, you can actually potentially make use of this tool for your own benefit. Now, the highlight of this section, if you see, web application security, network security kind of goes hand in hand with the network and the web application being different layers. And incident management is one of the events that is known because once you breached, you need to know how an incident or a breach can be resolved. And we are discussed use cases with Jira and Zendesk, which is one of the industry tools being used for most of the incident management purposes. Ram, can I have the next slide, please? Yeah. And then digital forensics is going to be one of the topics which is going to be taught by Sir again, wherein he's going to be teaching you about tools like autopsy, because every security event that happens, you need to know or understand the forensics bit of it, because unless or until you do not know what happened or how it happened, you won't be able to keep yourself more secure in the future. And that will be followed by compliance frameworks, identity and access management, along with case studies of CyberArk. And then the last two, which will be cloud security. And undoubtedly, cloud security is definitely an important topic to be discussed because of us all moving to the cloud environment. This is going to be one of the hard jobs that is going to be in requirement, at least for the next few years. And finally, our last session would be around cyber threat intelligence, which will briefly discuss about the different types of threats, which includes external, internal threats, and use of basic tools like OpenCTI and ThreatCrowd. So what I'd recommend is when you come into this AEP or Antwork experiential program, as what we call it, the best or the highlight is going to be that you come with an approximately rough knowledge of what you've been taught around or what you learn. But when you go out from here, you'll see aspects of fields which will make you a stronger candidate, because you're not learning about 1, 2, or 3, but you're learning about 10 different domains, which also gives you insights to pursue your career further. And I strongly recommend you guys to kind of head to this link. Ram, can you just go previous slide, please? The slide that you were explaining. So there's a code down there. That code will be shared with you. Once you head onto this code, you'll be able to kind of check the bootcamp program in detail. And I'd strongly recommend you to do that, right? So without any further ado, I'd request Sir to just conclude our presentation with a couple of topics left up.
Yeah. Thank you, Kaushik, and thank you, Ram. So very quickly, we talk about OWASP, which is basically Open Web Application Security Project. It stands for, it's a consortium of many organizations. It's a non-profit which actually does research on security, and then it publishes, it lists of top vulnerabilities, as well as it also publishes its views about the tools. It also has got its own tools. It's a community-led program, as I said, like any other community-led program. Over 275 local chapters worldwide. There are tens of thousands of members, and industry-leading organizations are part of it, IBMs and Googles and Microsofts of the world. And it also has educational and training conferences programs. You can go on OWASP.org and you can find a lot about it. So one of the things which OWASP does is it publishes at regular interval, not yearly basis, but it publishes at regular interval, normally about 2 to 3 years, top 10 security vulnerabilities and which are being exploited and which are being taken advantage of by the hackers. And the latest one, which OWASP has published in 2021, is SQL injection of any time, whether it's a SQL injection or code injection, it comes at the top. Broken authentication, which basically is, knowing your authentication details. So it's, in a layman's language, your user ID and password. It could be hacked through multiple techniques. It could be social engineering, or you could be using default user ID and password, or somebody would have by mistake would have published. And there are tools available where, which can show. There are a number of organizations, even on the web, by using some particular commands on Google, you can find out there are a number of places you will be able to figure out their default user ID and password. Sensitive data exposure, we talked about the confidential data. Cross-site scripting, we talked about. That's number 4. Insecure deserialization. This is something, this takes advantage of, normally whenever on a network, traffic goes, it goes into packets. So it doesn't go, your mail of 1,000 words doesn't go as one shot. It probably goes as a packets of say 100 bytes or 128 bytes or 4K bytes, whatever it is. Now, so that's that breaking up your object into these packets is called serialization. And on the other end, those objects are reassembled, and that's a activity called deserialization. Now, if this whole process is not secure, and then an hacker can come in and introduce his or her packet. Like suppose if it was a bank transfer, and just think about the packet which contained account number that has been changed. Rather than your genuine beneficiary account number, the hacker changes his or her account number and the whole money goes there. Then you use components with known vulnerabilities. Your application could be secure, but if you are using third-party components or components from open source, which have known vulnerabilities, then your applications becomes again, vulnerable. Insufficient logging and monitoring, which is very, very important. If an incident happens, then the way you figure out how it happened, which object in your deployment environment was hit first, you find it out from your logs. It could be server logs, it could be firewall logs, it could be application logs, blah, blah. XML external entity, something similar to cross-site, but writing an XML reference or using XML reference object into an XML. Broken access control, which basically is a user. A normal user can take admin privileges, that kind of thing, and then of course security misconfiguration. So these are the things. These are the 10 which are the top 10 from OWASP side and which need to be taken care into security. Okay. An incident has happened, you've resolved it, but then at the same time, you must go to the root of it. And that's where digital forensics comes into picture. Digital forensic is an exact equivalent of the normal forensic, which the crime team does it at the crime scene. They pick up the evidence, they analyze the evidence, be it the blood DNA or be it some sort of evidence left, fingerprints and those kind of things. Digital forensic exactly does the same thing from digital perspective. However, it is different from physical forensic because digital information is very easy to change or manipulate. In physical, if you lifted a blood samples or blood marks, it won't change. But in digital, if you lifted a file and somebody can change it, or the timestamp could change it. If the timestamp changes, then the evidence will not stand in the courts. So digital forensics looks after that. And that's what we'll be talking about when we talk about digital forensic, that what are the things you should take care of, maintaining the chain of custody. Those are kind of things which we'll be sharing because it's very, very important. Not only that you get the evidence, but at the same time you preserve the evidence so that it stands in the court of law. So that's something giving you a very high level overview about a couple of topics in the overall list of 10 large topics which actually cover the entire gamut of cybersecurity. And once you've gone through that, you are up and ready to face the world completely. So that's where I would like to conclude. And yeah, it's open to any questions you have. Or Ram or Kaushik, if you guys want to add anything before that. Over to you.
Kaushik, you want to add anything before we start taking up the questions? Okay. So, Dr. Jagdish, there's one question from Kamal Pruthi.
Right.
Right, which is, in today's time, companies are leveraging APIs. Could you please suggest some manual and automated tools to test API security? And what are the common vulnerabilities that are there while testing API security?
So the first thing in API security, Kamal, right?
Yeah, it's Kamal.
Right, Kamal. So there is I'm just taking one very simple example. There is a concept of called context. It can be called session ID or it can be called by different names in different places. But the context has to be maintained throughout as I earlier discussed that example, that it will go from Amazon to the payment gateway to your bank, and then back. The context has to be retained, and that context has to be so strong that nobody is able to change it. Now, one of the mechanism which is used is encryption, and use a strong encryption. So a very short answer to this, but this is the thing which is in API vulnerabilities and API security is used. One is the data has to be, because it's traveling between different systems, so it has to travel in an encrypted form, and then it has to maintain that context. So nobody is able to impersonate, because if the guy has to impersonate, then they have to recreate that context. It could be assassin ID, or it could be a token ID, or it could be anything which the applications have to be ensure.
Okay. So there is also a general questions, Dr. Jagdish, around the cybersecurity program is is the coding and programming language a prerequisite for somebody to get into this domain of cybersecurity?
So yes, you don't need to be a programmer to the extent of a normal developer, but yes, you do need to do some scripting. So, and which is the languages which are available, like let's say Python and all that, they're pretty high level and they're easy to learn. They're not difficult. So scripting is required, and the reason scripting is required that you want to, either you can run the commands manually one by one, or you can just put them into script so that they run in an automated fashion. Python is used quite a lot. There are other languages also. Shell scripting in case of Unix, like let's say Kali Unix and all that, which is required. Shell scripting skills are required. But these are not something which require a very high or advanced knowledge of any programming language. It's very easy to do it, simple. It's just whatever commands you are going to execute manually one by one, you are just putting those into a batch file kind of thing. Most of the tools which come in, they have GUI interface. I mean, forget about Nmap and those things, but then Nmap comes out with very good, very strong help. So you don't have to remember the 20 options which Nmap has got. Those options are always, you can always do a man. But other tools like, let's say, Wireshark or Bugshoot or any other they have a GUI user interface. Okay, next question, please.
Kaushik, you have any question? Actually, we don't have any more questions here. There's one question from Deepak Subhash. I don't know if it is for us or for this this post. How do we do with the structured when the structured query language is injected into the system?
Right. So the way we are going to do, Deepak, is we are going to take you through the whole process, how a system becomes vulnerable to SQL injection. What kind of systems? How do you find out the system is vulnerable to SQL injection? And then how to strengthen our system to ensure that it takes care of that. One of the common thing which is done is input validation. Input validation is one of a key thing. So normally, let's say if it's a e-commerce site and which allows you a box where you can input a product code, and based on that, it will show only those products. It's a help to you. You're not interested in thousands of products that website is selling. Now over there, you can input an SQL statement where you can say 1 = 1. Now your application should be intelligent enough to check whether it's a valid product code or it is some SQL statement. So that's at a high level, which I can tell you, Deepak, this is how you ensure. Input validation is one of the mechanisms which is used to avoid SQL injection.
Okay. So probably we'll take one more question. Which this is from Ramesh. Right. So he's asking like, how can we secure the SaaS-based apps, and what are the good tools for that?
Okay, so there are multiple tools. I won't go into particular names, but SaaS application are, if you look at, you have to look them at in two stages. One is it's a normal application. Think about it, it's a normal application. So all the things which we talked about in web app security will be applicable to this. It has to follow secure development. It has to follow. The principles of DAST, SAST, and runtime application self-protection. Now, when it goes to cloud, there are a couple of things which get added on. And cloud, when your application is running on cloud, and especially in a SaaS mode, it runs in something called multi-tenancy mode. You know, the same application I might be using, Ram might be using, Kaushik might be using, and Ramesh might be using. So the application, so that's a scenario which is different from if had the application been running into, you know, our dedicated data center. So the same application could be, you know, in that case, Samsung could be running it, Nokia could be running it, LG could be running it. So in multi-tenancy, then the application has to ensure that there is, you know, there is this pakka wall between the data of these different applications. So we call it tenancy control. That's one of the things. And that leads to authentication and access control that has to be strengthened. So these are a couple of things. There are about 7 or 10 points which go on top of what a normal application we do for security for the cloud part. But the top two, I would say, is multi-tenancy control. That has to ensure that the second is of course authentication and authorization control, and that also comes from the same thing, because in cloud it could be on the even your authentication authorization application could be a shared one. So how do you ensure that the shared applications are running in you know, isolated cubicles, and they don't interfere with each other?
So, Dr. Jagdish, there's probably the one more question which is around the career in cybersecurity, which is kind of, you know, you have already answered, but probably we can get some more you know, idea about it. So, what are the non-technical domains in cybersecurity, and can I get into this field without much technical knowledge? So this question is asked by Palak.
Okay, so I think you would need some basic, you would need to get into some basic, to be honest, technology side. And as I said, you need to know a bit of scripting, bit of, it could be Python scripting, or it could be Linux scripting. That's the thing which you will need to know, because there is nothing like, I would say, that pure non-technical job. If you look at a very high level, what are the roles in cybersecurity? I can categorize them into 3 levels. One is somebody who looks or finds out vulnerabilities. It's a hacker. We can call it white hacker, which is a good guy, and black hat hacker, which is a bad guy. So one is hacker. So and I'm talking about white hacker part. So who finds out vulnerabilities into the application. Second is an architect who designs how those vulnerabilities can be, you know, plugged in, how those vulnerabilities can be removed, what kind of security architecture my application should take. And third is, of course, a management role, which is basically a CISO kind of role, Chief Information Security Officer. Now, the first two roles which we're talking about, where I'm talking about technical, is it that technical as equivalent to a developer? No, it is not. It is, I would put this cybersecurity guy's knowledge, something, I would compare this role similar to a tester's role, a person who is engaged in testing, not a tester, but a testing person or test architect or something. Even a test architect needs to know bit of, basic level of scripting knowledge, so that he or she can run his test cases automatically. If need be, they can write a small script. Of course, at the same time, there are tools available which they can use. So I would, if I have to give an equivalence in the application development side, cybersecurity person is something equivalent to a QA person. So QA person is not absolutely technical, but at the same time not absolutely non-technical as well. Hope I'm able to give some idea of what kind of technical skills you require.
All right. Thank you so much, sir. That was a wonderful session. And what I'd recommend everybody is to just head to the Antioch website for more information. And we can't just remember he's also taking of the important islands here. So do enroll for the course to learn more and see yourself transition from where you are to where you potentially can be beneficial for the cybersecurity industry today. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, Kaushik. Thank you, Ram, and thank you everybody who has participated in this discussion. It was lovely, and have a good evening.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.